Mary Bell, the child serial killer. Mary Flora Bell, one of the most infamous child killers in British history, was only 11 years old when she committed two shocking murders in 1968. Her crimes, along with her young age, drew widespread attention and left a permanent mark on criminal history. What makes Mary Bell's case particularly disturbing is not only her age but also the cold, calculated manner in which she carried out the killings of two young boys, making her a chilling figure in true crime. Early life of Mary Bell. Mary Bell was born on May 26, 1957, in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. From the very beginning of her life, Mary faced extreme adversity. Her mother, Betty Bell, was a 16-year-old prostitute who reportedly tried to kill Mary several times during her infancy by giving her medication in an attempt to poison her. Mary's father, Billy Bell, was largely absent, and her home life was characterized by neglect, abuse, and violence. It is also believed that Betty allowed or forced Mary to engage in sex acts with her clients from a very young age, contributing to her deep psychological trauma. These early experiences left Mary emotionally scarred and socially isolated. Her behavior as a child reflected the horrors she endured, showing signs of aggression and violent tendencies from a young age. By the time she was 10, Mary had already developed a reputation in her community as a bully who was prone to acts of cruelty, particularly towards other children. The murders. In the summer of 1968, Mary Bell committed two horrific murders in her hometown of Scotswood, a poor neighborhood in Newcastle. Both of her victims were young boys who lived in the area. These murders, carried out with shocking coldness, were an early indication of her deeply disturbed psychological state. First murder, Martin Brown. On May 25, 1968, the day before her 11th birthday, Mary Bell lured Martin Brown, a 4-year-old boy, into an abandoned house. Once inside, she strangled him to death with her bare hands. Martin's body was found later by local children, but there was no immediate evidence pointing to murder, and the authorities initially believed the boy's death was accidental. In the days following the murder, Mary displayed bizarre behavior that foreshadowed her later crimes. She and her friend, Norma Bell, no relation, broke into a local nursery school and vandalized it. They left behind notes that boasted about the murder of Martin Brown, but these messages were dismissed by the police as a childish prank. Mary later visited Martin Brown's house, where she asked to see his body. This unusual and morbid curiosity about her victim was one of the many disturbing behaviors Mary exhibited after the murder. Second murder, Brian Howe. Just 2 months after the first killing, on July 31, 1968, Mary Bell struck again. This time, her victim was Brian Howe, a 3-year-old boy. Mary lured Brian to a nearby wasteland, where she strangled him as well. After killing Brian, Mary went further, using a pair of scissors to mutilate his body. She carved an M into his stomach and cut his hair and genitals. The brutality of this second murder shocked the police and raised suspicions that the killer was a young person, as the mutilations appeared amateurish. A subsequent investigation revealed that Mary Bell had been seen with Brian Howe shortly before his death, which led authorities to question her more thoroughly. The arrest and confession. Following the discovery of Brian Howe's body, police began to focus their investigation on Mary Bell and Norma Bell. The two girls had been seen together shortly before both murders, and their behavior in the aftermath of the crimes raised red flags. During questioning, Norma broke down and implicated Mary in the killings. Mary, on the other hand, remained calm and defiant, denying her involvement at first but later confessing to the murders, albeit in a detached and emotionless manner. Mary's confession shocked investigators. She provided chilling details about how she had killed the boys, revealing that she derived a sense of power and control from taking their lives. Her lack of remorse and the cold, calculated nature of the murders were deeply unsettling, especially considering her young age. The trial and sentencing. Mary Bell's trial began on December 5, 1968, at Newcastle Assizes. She was charged with the manslaughter of both Martin Brown and Brian Howe. The prosecution argued that Mary had committed the murders out of a desire for notoriety and power, while the defense claimed that she suffered from a severe personality disorder, exacerbated by the abuse and neglect she had endured throughout her childhood. During the trial, psychiatrists testified that Mary showed signs of psychopathy and emotional detachment, but she was still deemed fit to stand trial. Her lack of empathy and her pleasure in causing pain and death were central to the prosecution's case. On December 17, 1968, Mary Bell was convicted of manslaughter on the grounds of diminished responsibility. The jury accepted that she had significant mental health issues, which reduced her culpability for the crimes. The judge sentenced her to indefinite detention under Her Majesty's pleasure, the British equivalent of a life sentence for juvenile offenders. Norma Bell, who was also tried for her involvement in the second murder, was acquitted of all charges, as it was determined that she had been manipulated by Mary. Imprisonment and release. Mary Bell spent the next 12 years in various correctional facilities, including Red Bank Secure Unit, where she was closely monitored and treated by psychologists. Despite the horrors of her past and the crimes she had committed, Bell was reportedly a well-behaved inmate who responded well to treatment. She was eventually transferred to an open prison, and allowed some degree of freedom as part of her rehabilitation. In 1980, at the age of 23, Mary Bell was released from custody. She was given a new identity, and began a new life, away from the public eye. Her release sparked outrage in Britain, with many people believing that she should have been kept behind bars for life due to the brutal nature of her crimes. However, Bell had been judged to be rehabilitated, and was granted anonymity to protect her from media attention and public harassment. Life after release. After her release, Mary Bell lived a quiet and private life, largely shielded from the media thanks to her court-granted anonymity. She became a mother in 1984, and in 2003, Bell won a High Court ruling that extended her anonymity to protect both her and her daughter from public scrutiny. This ruling was controversial, as it was one of the few instances in which lifelong anonymity was granted to a convicted murderer. Despite the backlash, the court decided that revealing Bell's identity would put her and her daughter at risk of harm, especially given the intense media interest in the case. Legacy and impact. The case of Mary Bell remains one of the most shocking and complex in British criminal history. It raises difficult questions about how society should treat child killers, particularly those who have experienced significant abuse and trauma. Mary's young age and the brutal nature of her crimes forced Britain to confront uncomfortable truths about childhood violence, mental health, and the failings of the social care system. Bell's case has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and discussions over the years, with criminologists, psychologists, and legal experts debating how best to balance justice and rehabilitation in cases involving children who commit violent crimes.